Whereas Covington is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Covington is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contributions to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Covington has a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Covington acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 500 Extra Mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November the 1st. Now therefore I do, Mayor of Covington, to hereby proclaim November the 1st to be Extra Mile Day. I urge each individual in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, family, community, country, or world a better place. So November the 1st will be Extra Mile Day in the city of Covington.
Cool.
All right.
All right, I like that. We did that last year. We're going to consider a proposal from Ms. Onitis regarding carryover funds from the wastewater budget for professional services as part of the Department of Environmental Quality compliance with consent order. A is a civil charge and B is an environmental project. Do you want to explain that to us?
Yes, sir. As you all know, on September 24th, the Water Control Board adopted and approved our consent order that the city had been trying to work to execute for quite some time. Part of that is an environmental project that we as a city offered to do as a good faith effort for our ongoing environmental compliance, which that accounts for a portion of the funds, I believe $56,000 to be exact, and then a civil charge of $6,426, which is attributed from the bypasses that we have had over the years at the wastewater treatment plant. These are funds that were programmed in the FY19, FY20 budget for the CMOM plan, so we're just shifting the purpose to cover this. We've recognized that through the order that we've entered into with DEQ that the CMOM will be much more rigorous, and the initial budgeted amount was not sufficient. So this is getting us rolling on some of our preliminary compliance work and also setting aside some dollars for developing what will be needed for the CMOM, and then we'll be coming to you this year during budget prep for those dollars. But essentially, we're just looking to use some carryovers to button up all the loose ends with the consent order, and the payment must be within 30 days. So that's why we're trying to work to get those balls rolling.
Okay.
Okay, questions about that, Council?
Agenda.
We need that for the agenda next week.
Can we put that on the agenda for next week, or do we?
You can put it on the agenda for next week.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Agenda.
Agenda.
We have a presentation from CHA Consulting Services regarding landfill use and the life cycle of the current cell in use. Mr. Steele, would you like to present that tonight?
Thank you, Mayor, and other council members. I don't know how everybody feels about this, or do I need to keep,
Put it down so I can hear you.
is this better? As long as
Yeah,
I'm away
much
from
better.
everybody?
Thank you.
Don't get too close to Fred there beside you, though. He's
Okay,
6 foot.
10-4.
Thomas, turn the AC down, bro.
So, the purpose of this meeting is, or this presentation is several-fold. One, we recently finished doing the most updated survey of the landfill, which will tell us how much space is left based on where we are in the life of the landfill. Secondly, we need to bring to the attention of council an issue that we have with continued additional tonnage that is coming to the landfill. DEQ has again changed the way that they are measuring the tonnage and how that relates to the current permitting for the landfill. That's going to continue to ever evolve. We just have to keep moving with it. But I'm going to go through this presentation, hopefully get some direction from council, give you the information you need to make some decisions, as well as staff, and give you an update on where we are with the landfill and space remaining. So just wanted to start out with a little bit of photo. This shows kind of as the landfill has evolved throughout the years. Again, the purpose of this discussion, right now, the current stormwater permit daily tonnage rate is 51 tons a day. In the past, the DEQ folks were allowing us to do a running average. Now that this has come back and we have a new person again, they've looked at the permitting and assumed that it means it's daily. And they are holding us to the letter, 51 tons each day. That is not how it was operating in the past, so we have to make some changes to make sure that we don't get dinged by DEQ for not meeting permitting requirements. Something else I just wanted to bring to council's attention, every community that operates a landfill is required to have a 20-year stormwater management plan. That means that you have to have a plan on where your waste is going for 20 years at a time. Even if council would decide to operate the cell D, which is sitting up there permitted, not in your plan now, you can't make the 20 years with all of the area you have up there. So we would recommend in the next 3 years that you update that plan, which I'm sure council will give us some direction on that based on staff. You've got to decide, once this cell is full, do you go to cell D? Do you look at some of the options that we looked at before to have a transfer station? Do you go in with some other people and go to a larger regional cell? All that needs to be updated in the next 0 to 3 years. So I don't think we're in any major hurry for that, but as I give you the timeline, staff and council can decide on how quickly you want to go into that effort. And again, just with budgets being tight, to look at those options again. Ms. Onitis has indicated that we may need to start looking at some of that. We do have money in the existing budget to cover that if staff and council would direct CHA to look into some of the future options. So not looking to try to bring additional money in. That's money that's already in the budget that you approved. So again, right now, the daily tonnage permit is 51 tons a day. Cell A, B, and C, which are A and B are now closed. C is what you're filling up right now, amount to 750,000 cubic yards of available space. As of September 1st, you have 209,790 cubic yards left from those all three, A, B, and C. So that just gives you accumulated of where you've come from your very first cell all the way through the cell you're in now. Which means up to date in all the cells, the city of Covington has placed 540,430 cubic yards of waste in those cells. Again, the solid waste management plan requires us to know what we're going to do in the city for 20 years, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Remaining cell C and the cell that has not been opened yet, if you utilize all that, you would have as much as 12 years left. So again, we got to keep in mind that if you want to stay up to date with a 20-year plan, you're looking at being okay for 12 more years with the real estate you have up there. We're bumped up against national forest. So all of that being said, as your consultant, I need you to know way ahead of time before we get to the end of the road that you've got a map on how you handle solid waste for the city for the next 20 years. So this gives you a rough idea of why we're dealing with a 51-ton issue. So this is a daily limit rate, past 3 months, past 6 months, past 12 months, past year and a half, and past 2 years. So this gives you an idea, daily average, we're right on that 51 tons, day in and day out. Now that doesn't happen every day of the year, but during certain times, mostly the construction period, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where some of that waste comes from when we have when the city does trash pickup day. There are some times when we are over that 51, and now that they're saying that that is not meeting the requirements daily, the city is having to watch that tonnage every single day. And Ms. Onitis can confirm, when the city is in a relationship with other partners that are helping paying the debt service, we need to make sure that we're able to take that waste and generate the revenue to pay for the debt that the city has taken on. So need to be able to manage that waste stream, being able to come in for the people who are paying the bills. So one of the things that I want to talk to council about, what is that new daily tonnage rate and how does that impact the permit? How does that impact your plan right now to pay off the debt service and generate the revenue to get to closing the sale at the same time that you finish paying off the debt that you borrowed to develop the sale? So right now, if 51 tons is not enough, what is the next number up that makes the most sense? Like my time's up, so thanks. So this is just a graph from June of 2020 back through March of 2018, and it gives you an idea. You can see some months of the year you're way below 50, and other months of the year, sometimes when they had an unforeseen construction project in Bath County, where you have concrete and brick, which is very dense, lots of weight per cubic foot, you hit the spikes. Before we were able to manage that because it was a monthly average, now they're doing it daily. So we've got to figure out how to get some pressure off of the landfill folks because they're having to watch. And if they get to 50 tons and there's still trucks that have hit the road with the trash cans on the truck, whoever's sending it charges them. As soon as they hook up to it, they're going to charge them whether they get all the way to the landfill or not. So planning that and making sure that all that is fluid is what we're trying to do now. So ideally, we would pick a daily ton per day rate that's sufficient for the city, both private and residential, for Bath County and for your commercial customers. DEQ uses the max rate to determine permitted life remaining. So I think this is where council got a little bit nervous last time some of this conversation started. When you pick the daily tonnage rate, that does not mean that that's what you're going to get every single day. But DEQ, to be responsible, has to rewrite your permit assuming that you are going to get every ton of that every single day. Because if they don't, and they say, well, we know you asked for 51 tons, but you're only getting 38, 40 daily, and then you as the city, not this council, a future council, runs short and the landfill fills up fast, or they go back to DEQ and say, the permit says we should have had 2 more years. Well, previous council wanted to go to 51, 75, whatever that number is, but we all agreed that you only get less than that. They can't do that. They have to cover their bases. So if you go up in your daily tonnage permit, which all that is us putting a request together, Ms. Onitis submitting that, we've already talked to them, they're ready for the city to choose a higher rate. They're going to say that they're going to assume that you get every ton of that. So I'm going to show you here in a minute what that means, and everybody needs to be very clear that that doesn't mean that you are going to fill, your sale's going to fill up 3 years faster. It will if you get all of it, but guess what you're getting if you get more tonnage? More money. So you're paying that debt off more quickly. So, that being said, let's go through where some of this generation of tonnage is coming from. The City of Covington collection routes averages about 18 tons a day, 5 days a week. It fluctuates after holidays. Seasonal cleanup adds about 7.5 tons a day for about 2 weeks. So there's a little spike that you're going to deal with, but that's something you can plan for and something you can make sure you manage so you don't have to turn people away from the landfill. Daily tonnage generation for your private commercial entities. They account for about 11 tons a day. Ingevity is a new player to the game. They used to deal with West Rock. Now They're bringing it to the city. That's something that is different from when we first picked this 51 tons a day. So at some point, I assume council would say, why did CHA tell us 51 if it wasn't going to be enough? Here's one that we weren't planning on. It's another 7 tons a day addition that wasn't planned for in the original plan. Clean outs, when they do a clean out, it can be as much as 30 tons a day.
For how many days?
That's just maybe one or two out of once or two times a year.
Oh, okay.
But again, if we know that that is something that's coming, the revenue is very welcomed. We just need to make sure that that 30 tons a day doesn't happen at the same time that you do city cleanup and the same time that Bass bring in an entire building that they tore down.
Yeah.
So just having that planning in place. And then the wastewater treatment plant sludge is about 5 tons a day, 4-day-a-week average. Bath County is 18 tons a day, and since the Bath County construction kicked up, that's added another 10 tons a day. So again, that is an important customer for the debt repayment structure that we have, but it also has added 10 tons a day more than we had planned when we first set that 51 tons a day number. So as council have a pretty good feel for where the tonnage is coming from. There's nothing coming out of nowhere. We have a very good handle on where the trash is being generated. So we know where those big numbers are coming from. So let's go now to a timeline. Start all the way back to June of 2000. In 2000, the first sale was opened. In 2008, sale B opened. In 2014, Bath County came on board as a customer. In March of 2018, sale C was opened, which is the one we're in now, with a 10-year debt service repayment. And so now we're shooting for somewhere around 2027, 2028 is when that landfill will be full, and you will also pay off the debt service for that. So they are still intersecting at the same time, which is very important. What that means is, right now, whether it's me or somebody else, city needs to be looking ahead, what happens after 2027, 28.
That's not open in cell D.
That is not, this is cell D, not even in the game.
Okay.
So to give you an update on how the city staff has done since the purchase of the new equipment, we talked about way back when that compaction rates were a huge issue. Before we bought the equipment that they needed to do proper compaction, they were averaging about 770 pounds per cubic yard. And essentially that's how much trash they can pack into a cubic yard square. So before they could get 770 pounds. The industry standard, I told you at that point, was between 1,000 and 1,400 pounds per cubic yard. So we were 30% of your cell had air pockets left in it, and you weren't getting full usage of it before the new equipment came on. The volume survey that we did in September 2020, which is a digital survey that is absolutely to the inch, tells us that you are generating 1,045 pounds per cubic yard for your compaction right now. So you're in the industry standard range. So, I mean, I want to give the kudos out to the guys up there on the mountain. They have picked up the slack. We spent a lot of time emphasizing how important that was. The numbers that I gave you depended on them doing a good job, so that was kind of a teaming arrangement between me and them.
Yeah.
If they did not do a good job, then my numbers weren't going to match, and the sale was going to fill up too fast. You were going to still owe debt service, essentially it'd be like you being upside down in a car. So we're on track now to meet the timeline. So wanted to go to this. This is where kind of the rubber hits the road. I'm recommending as your consultant that we pick a number higher than 51 tons a day. If you don't do that, then you are going to get fined at some point. We cannot manage the tonnage in a way that we stay under the 51 right now. So If you go up to 75 or 100, I just gave you two different ranges. I'm going to tell you how that impacts the years based on what the permit is going to be rewritten for, is what I talked about before. So currently, you're written for a 51 tons a day, and at the previous 739 pounds per cubic yard of compaction, that was going to leave you with 5.3 years left. If you go to 75 tons at the very bottom, you're seeing that at the same usage rate, at the 1,000 pound per cubic yard compaction, you are at the same years. So essentially what I'm telling council is if you choose 75 tons per day, because you are compacting it 30% more than you were before, then your life remaining, even written into the permit, is not going to change any from where you are at 51, because you're doing a much better job compacting it. And that doesn't mean that you're going to hit that 5.4 years, and that only means that if you are going to get 75 tons a day. Right now, we're shooting right here. I'm afraid to hit that. Yeah. So if you look at this, this is your average tonnage usage. And if that holds true, then we're looking at 8 years left, which puts you at the summer of 2028. Your debt service would be paid off in 27. So that may fluctuate up or down. Your permit, if the city decides to up the daily tonnage to 75, your new permit is going to say you are going to be full in 5 years. That doesn't mean that you're going to be full in 5 years. If it does end up being 75 tons a day, you're going to generate the revenue that you need to pay it off in 5 years. So I had to tell myself this coming up the road like 6 times and think, how can I make sure that everybody understands what I'm trying to say? So there's a difference between what the DEQ has to write in your permit and what is real. So does that make sense? I don't want anybody to not, I may have not explained that very well, because we really do need some direction to make sure that the 51 tons a day does not continue to get overage on it. So I guess the question, and it doesn't, I'll let Ms. Onitis and staff deal with this, but the bottom line is 75 tons a day would give us a much better opportunity to manage the waste stream coming in. 100 tons a day is like a silver bullet, but if that makes council a little more nervous, because that does start cutting in to the years remaining. Again, even if you went to 100, that doesn't mean that you're going to get 100. It just means that no matter what spike you get, anytime during the year, is if it stays under 100, you are still within your permit. We can't go any higher than that, because anywhere that you're over 100 daily, you have to do a traffic survey and figure out whether the road's adequate to bring that much waste in. So I guess there's several options. 75, that probably is a feel good, because you're really kind of staying in your sweet spot. But there are going to be days throughout the year where that 75 could not be enough. And staff will have to work really hard to catch those days ahead of time and make sure that you manage those days and you don't get over that. And we've been able to get DEQ to give us some variances on those, because if you're good 360 days a year and 5 days out of the year longevity hits right after Christmas and something else is happening in Bath County all at once, then we may have to call ahead of time and say, look, we have an out of the ordinary event going on. We're going to tell you ahead of time we need to get some relief on this. So if you want a silver bullet, you would go to 100. 75 is kind of an in the middle. And if 75 looks like it's still hard to manage, we can go back to them and say, we thought 75 was going to be good, but things keep changing. We can go back again. This is going to go a long way to them seeing that the city is proactive and they are on top of their situation. Ms. Onitas, Sandy, and myself have had multiple conversations with DQ. They understand where we are. They know that the council is dedicated to continuing to stay within the permit. They know that I'm presenting this, so I wanted to make sure that the council fully understood where we were with all. So I'm going to go through this quick because I don't want to get too far down in the weeds. That was really the main purpose of my presentation. But just to kind of re-emphasize where all this money is going. So cost of landfilling and collections, the city collection customers pay a monthly fee that includes allocations for fixed annual costs and for sinking fund future costs. So essentially you're paying for running the cell and you're paying for closing the one that you filled up before. And this just shows where how those are split up. So while the customers get a single bill, when it comes in, we are making sure that each of these buckets get the money they need so that you can fund each one of those. And so the revenue they generate and where that revenue goes in the overall plan to run the landfill.
Where is longevity in this?
Longevity is
Maybe under commercial.
$32.32 for commercial. So they would be under the commercial accounts.
Question, with our closed cells, the post-closure care, the other localities in the Highlands contribute to those closing care
That's
costs.
correct.
What is the total dollar amount?
I don't have that in this presentation, Ms. Onitas. BB could pull that pretty easily. They do their part, depending on what those costs are, until the closure is
Expired.
totally
which is
expired.
within the next, I believe, year. or
You're
two.
looking 4 or 5 years that's gonna be, because they got out of it in about 96.
Right. And it's a 30-year closure plan.
Right.
So they're on the hook to help you pay for the closure management through the life of that. C, you and Bath County will own that one. So, again, I want to emphasize that based on the survey we just did, we're on track for the landfill closing at the same time that the debt service is retired right now. There needs to be an adjustment to the daily tonnage rate because we're getting massive fluctuations of tonnage from places we weren't counting on, but the revenue mechanism is in place for them to pay their part. So essentially, the only thing that we are having an issue with now is that per day tonnage. The compaction's good. We've got a handle on the site up there. Alan and I and Sandy have done a good job to get the roads in good condition. We're not getting pinged by the site visits with trash flying around anymore like we did way back when. The scales are brand new. That has been tremendously helpful to track where tonnages are coming from. Everything's running pretty smooth. So just looking forward, and we did this before, but at some point, understanding that that 20-year plan cannot be satisfied with the landfill space you have left, which is C and D. D's permitted, but not even in this plan. When I showed you that first slide earlier, if D were something you moved into after you've closed C, you still can only get 12 years moving out. So there's going to be about 8 years left at the end that the city has to have a plan to do something. Doesn't mean you have to make that decision now, but I really would rather not wait till the Hail Mary pass time like we did last time, which took about 5 years off me and Alan's life.
Because when D is done, that is it up there, right?
Yep.
Unless you buy more property, and we have national forest bordering the majority of that property. And permitting brand new space is not something that happens overnight. So if that were something the city wanted to look into for the 20-year plan, that probably should start now, whether it's this council or a future one, whether it's this engineer or a future one, that would probably be in the book as the direction that everybody involved needs to go moving down the road. The 20-year plan is for a reason, and none of this moves very fast. So they can't wait until the very end, and then where are you gonna take your trash? It's sitting around, it's laying on the corners of streets, it's DQ, they try to stay way proactive. So not to get into that, but again, we have budgeted money that would allow us to start studying some of these options again. Some of the things that the city looked at in the past involved a transfer station shared with the county. It involved hauling waste across the line to West Virginia. It involved going in with the regional group with Craig County, Bath County, other counties to see if you could get enough tonnage to be interesting to Roanoke Regional. There's multiple options we looked at. And all of those, council at that time
Remember that.
wanted us to say, what does that impact, how does that impact the monthly utility bill, period? And so I would take direction from Ms. Onitis on what we would look at, but ultimately I would bring the same types of impact to rate users versus your different options to the table and say, if you do this, then this is the impact to the monthly utility bill. If you do this one, this is the impact to the monthly utility bill. And then that makes it simple for everybody to understand, if you do this one, this is how it impacts your folks. This is how long you can do it. These are the partners that you need to get engaged with. Ms. Venitis would need some direction with me. Who do we start reaching out to discuss the options? I mean, the difficulty we had with one of them at the time, Allegheny County, they were under a gag order. They couldn't.
But aren't
even-
they,
Under
aren't they
contract.
close to being done with that
2022, I
though?
think.
May I interject? There have been some preliminary discussions beginning, and there's meetings being scheduled on discussing a regional approach. And part of that would be all of us here in the Highlands, as well as potentially how can we continue to include Bath County, and what does the next phase look like? We have not received positive financial advisement from our municipal advisors on moving forward with continuing to open a new cell. We've also been hit recently with not so good news with DEQ, with the constant changing regulations, with how we do our environmental sampling for the groundwater and everything there. What I will say with the regional discussion effort, I've provided some of that preliminary information to you all, and I had asked to potentially have a closed session based on liabilities and economic development discussion. Bath County has advised that if there's not some other strategy, that when their agreement is up, they will be moving to a different authority. So then we would be in a very different financial position as well, moving into a new cell on our own with just our residential and commercial customers. Staff does recommend at this time that, the 75 tonnage waiver would be an appropriate increase based on historic and current usage. Beyond that, nope, those are the only notes I made that I wanted to make sure people got. So there are discussions on the regional approach and whether we perhaps even do our own resource authority.
So just, again, a few more things that we considered and could revisit again. Formation of a regional partnership / service authority, which Ms. Onitis just talked about. Join an existing regional service authority as a member. Those would include Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Roanoke Valley Resource Authority. There are authorities in Augusta, and there's one in New River. So those are all just very high-level options that are out there that we could start looking into depending on the pleasure of council and staff. And again, for the 20 years, just need, in the next 0 to 3 years, need to make sure that that is in place. It can evolve, but DEQ needs to see something that actually is going to work. Future councils could modify that, but it needs to make sense for 20 years. And that is all I have.
So the biggest thing you need from us tonight is a consensus about the 75
I
ton a
did.
day?
I wanted the consensus from you all.
I'm sorry, I mean,
Yes.
that's the immediate
Yes, on the
need right
75
now.
ton, or would you prefer 100?
But that's the immediate need tonight,
Yes.
okay.
I go with
When is
75.
Bath County's up for
2027.
2027?
So technically, that would be in line with right around the time our cell would be filling. So therefore, we do run the risk if we, and part of that's all a planning effort. What do we want the next plan to be? But they have indicated that they would not be pursuing continued use of our landfill. I did receive a communication from Mr. Harrison in Bath County saying that, if it were to be in the news in the next few weeks, it's just that, well, because they discuss it in their public meetings, that they've been looking at authorities or they've been looking at their options too.
But
just like-
they're under contract to 27.
Yes,
Yeah.
but just like how we're doing our pre-planning now for 5 or 10
They
years or
should be
20,
doing
they're
too.
doing
Yeah.
the same thing on their end. So it was just FYI, they're actively looking at other options, and more than likely, it's an authority option.
Any more questions from council about any of the information? That's a lot of information.
You all right, Raymond?
I'm okay, that's good. Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, if you take the numbers that he gave us on the maximum tonnage, it's about 76 ton. The maximum we could
Yeah.
see in one day with your numbers is 76 ton.
Unless we get a spike from an
Well, now,
longevity,
that's
is that with
That's
an,
including those 30 tons.
but didn't
from
you have
longevity.
one on there where it said we had one spike at 80 something?
Yes.
Yeah,
There was a time when Ingevity had a clean out, there
85.
was city trash pickup day, and Bath County they were tearing down an entire wing
Oh,
of
yeah,
a concrete building. That was a spike that,
Yeah.
again, that's manageable, but it's tough to manage spreading out 82 tons over 2 or 3 days
At
if
50,
your permit's 51.
right.
When you gotta figure out how to spread 10 tons out over, that's just it's tougher to manage.
right.
And with the current limit, we've actually even discussed then, trying to schedule some of the shutdown refuse that Ingevity has, whether we do that on weekends, and then we're actually then operating it on overtime, to not impact our normal daily customers. When we're trying to do sludge, fall cleanup, or Bath County's regular refuse collections, when it's a entity trying to, do scheduled maintenance and scheduled work, just trying to figure out logistically how we plan it. I mean, I think part of that is just a planning piece, because a lot of these things are not always all the time.
Right.
So is the consensus 75 or 100?
100.
I'm at 75. I don't see any reason to go to 100.
I agree.
I'm good with that. You okay with that, Raymond, or?
I would suggest 100, but I'm okay with 75.
We can always go back and amend
We can
it
amend
if
it
we
if
see
we
that
need
it's
to.
not sufficient.
If they're not able to meet the
Okay.
75, I don't know why they couldn't.
And a good example is recently when they were doing all of the demo in Bath County at the Homestead, we actually did get a temporary waiver. So there are events when we know something's gonna be like maybe a 6-month construction project, that we can get temporary waivers that would then bump us to 100, but then our normal consistent would stay at 75, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Just to give you guys an idea, like right now, and we knew October was knocking on our door, and it's here. We know when we start our day at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, right now, we can only accommodate 23.5 tons because we already know where 27.5 is coming from. We know that. Ingevity, of course, they're going through their shutdown, and there's some big projects going on with them, with their kiln, and we took one can yesterday that was 18 tons. So that put a hurting on other things coming in. In a week from this coming Monday, we're into fall cleanup with the city. So I don't know where Ingevity will continue to be with their shutdown over there, but, I mean, our guys, I don't know how well they did in school in math, but they've been doing some powerful math up there for us. And it's tough to tell somebody you can't come, but we're being very mindful of 51 tons. And
Longevity gonna be-
kudos to our staff.
So how long does it take to get to up it to 75? Were we talking about 6 months before that'll happen?
No, I
No,
mean,
it's submitting it and then just getting DEQ to acknowledge receipt and provide the waiver, so maybe 2 weeks.
I think she might
mean,
fast track it through
that's-
faster than that, but that's the worst case
Yeah.
it would be. And the sooner we would get it in, they would acknowledge that that is in process and give us a little more leeway, give the city a little more leeway on the daily if it's bumping up against that 51.
With longevity down, do that reduce the amount of waste we get from them?
No, it's been increasing. They've been doing projects.
They're like in
As
a
part of
shutdown, so they're
maintenance
taking
work.
stuff out, cleaning up. So really it's more waste than,
I thought once they get it all out,
then that'll be back to normal.
Right.
I mean, the concern now is with Ingevity bringing their additional stuff, we're not able to meet the demand of the commercial and residential landfill.
longevity's supposed to be down for 4 weeks.
Yes. And as you recall, we had initially scheduled this discussion for, I believe it was August, and then we had to push it, and, the month of September, we had some other high priority items on the agenda, so this ended up being delayed for various circumstances. So unfortunately, that's where we find ourselves. I mean, there is a letter ready to go, and I can sign that tomorrow, and it will be sent to DEQ.
August was my fault, for the record. That's my
I was
fault.
trying to be nice to you.
I know, it's so nice, I appreciate it.
You got any place down at your house where you dump a couple hundred tons while we?
Until they catch you, yeah.
What's the difference, what does it affect if we do 100 instead of 75? I mean,
The permit will show that if you swelled into that 100 every single day, that you have less life left. But if you don't get 100 tons a day, which you clearly are not, then the track we're on to not fill up until your debt service needs to be retired, you're still on that same track. I mean, as long as I'm working on it and whoever else is working on it after, council should demand an annual survey update to make sure you're on track. And whether you're at 100 or 75, that is the tail of the tape on how you're tracking.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So with changing the tonnages, would that then in any way impact the environmental reporting requirements in any way because of higher volumes?
It would not, but it would impact your 20-year plan with DEQ because they would acknowledge that you may have a year or two less at the 100 ton per day. And so your 20-year plan would have to show 2 years further out than if you were on the 75 ton permit. They're going to blindly assume you're going to run out of space based on what you pick,
yeah.
75 or 100. They don't care what your average is. They have to say that they think you might, if you wanted to swell into that, you can. And if you do, then they have to say, this is when we think you're going to run out of space. So that impacts what your plan looks like for 20 years, because you may have to have a plan to do something 2 years earlier than you actually really have to. That's the biggest impact.
Yeah, we'll just have to start planning even sooner than we had started to
Well,
think
let's,
of start planning.
I think we were at a census of 75.
Yeah.
I'm All right, stay in there.
75.
Okay,
And you said the county was tied up until 22, correct?
It's in their contract.
So we can start between now and then, maybe looking at that with them,
Loose discussion.
loose, off the book, whatever you want to call it. Because what I'm worried about is if we don't discuss when we can, they're going to get into another 10, 15-year contract before we decide on something with them, and then we're going to be stuck once again having to do something on our own. If we're going to be looking at this in the long term, I do believe we need to do something where we can partner with them.
Yeah,
When we went
talked
through
about
this
that.
exercise the last time,
Yeah.
wasn't Allegheny an option, it was just more expensive?
Because they had to
It
give
was
us
up on
the
the
different
contract.
rate.
well, Allegheny was an option, but they, at the time, were in a contract that didn't allow them to shop freely. Legally, they weren't allowed to enter into negotiations because they were
They're already committed.
already committed. So the number they gave us, they were like, we can't talk to you, all we can do,
It's offered the open rate, basically, wasn't
Right.
it?
Yeah, there wasn't wiggle room to
Yeah.
discuss.
Right. You couldn't get a lower rate,
No.
correct,
So,
correct.
but that's why
Are you
we're
still up under
waiting
that contract?
2 more years.
They're up
2
in
years.
till
22.
2022.
Like David, if we're gonna discuss it, we can start now.
So
Yeah.
there's a meeting is scheduled with Mr. Lanford and Mr. Harrison and myself to start some of these discussions.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
And I will be sure to report out on that to you all.
I haven't had the ear of the council very much here lately, but we are doing a lot of great things in the city. I'm not gonna get into all the details, but I'm here probably 4 times, 5 times a month, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week. There's a lot of really good things going on in the city. I'm proud to be a part of that. Appreciate council and staff continuing to have faith in CHA and me personally. Just don't get a chance to tell you guys I appreciate all the work that I get and really enjoy seeing things that make a big impact on a community as nice as this one. So I tell Alan and Crystal and the folks that I'm here when I visit, nowhere else that I work, anywhere, has something for the community every single weekend. It is absolutely unbelievable, the amount of things that these folks get, that you guys are helping to provide them. It is a tremendous quality of life for the money that they're paying. So of all the places I go, just kudos to that, and appreciate all the work that you continue to give me. I'll always do a good job for you, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much. Okay.
So we have some
Drive.
items we need to put on. Do
Yes, sir?
you have something else?
No, I was telling him safe drive.
Oh, be
Starting
safe,
all the way
Steve.
back to Giles County.
She said for you to be safe going home.
Safe drive.
Yeah, I'm going down Blue Springs Road, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to look at some regular agenda items for next week. We have 2 appointments for the Planning Commission. The term of Pat Scruggs expires the 31st of this month, and Ms. O'Connor's unexpired term, which runs out the 31st of October, will need to be filled because due to her passing.
Agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to recommend Steve Wilson for the vacancy on the Planning Commission that Ms. O'Connor is unexpired term as well. So if you could add that to the list.
Have you received any other,
It was somebody or something.
I'm sorry. Just the 2 that are in the packet.
Now, there was an email. Caitlin Cook.
that was in the
Kelly.
packet, wasn't it?
Caitlin Cook.
That's okay.
Caitlin Cook.
That's in the
Yeah, that was,
It's in the
I saw it
packet.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's
in your
what I-
packet.
Where she had emailed, and I can't remember where I saw it at, but,
Yeah,
It's in your
It's
packet.
in the packet.
oh, okay.
But Steve is, told me he was interested in being on the Planning Commission. I'd like to recommend him, please.
Okay. We're going to hear a presentation from Chief Smith next week regarding, we're going to have Greg Burton's retirement.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll give him a going away party or something.
Agenda.
Agenda.
Mr. Bryant's will give us a quarterly financial review. We need to place that on the agenda, and we need to think about this as the first quarter of this year and the impact COVID's had on our revenue stream. We'll have to see how that turns out.
Agenda.
Council, do you have any new business?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Mayor,
Just,
just a reminder, you'll need to add the 3 ordinances discussed in the work session to the agenda for next week.
Yes.
Yeah, agenda.
just want to make, Alan, tell him how good of a job he did with Judah Watson Field. That playground looks good.
Yeah.
And the ribbon cutting on that
Yes.
is next
Friday.
Friday, okay.
Friday for that.
And then we got the one at the sports complex Wednesday.
Week from tomorrow.
Okay,
14th and 16th.
okay.
11:30 each day.
Yeah.
So y'all had no new business? Is there any public comment? I thought you was gonna do a PowerPoint. I think you grabbed that.
Before I start my comments, I just wanted to say about the Planning Commission appointment. I had expressed interest in previous months about filling one of those seats because I'm a certified planning commissioner. But I withdraw that interest, but thank you for your consideration anyway. That should make it easier for you, I would think. Okay, so my comments tonight have to do with the Allegheny Highlands Economic Development Corporation. I wanted to make these comments, and I wrote this probably about a month and a half. There was a lot going on with the schools and stuff, so I sort of put it on the back burner. So I've been somewhat familiar with the Allegheny Highlands Economic Development Corporation for a while, but I am, as is the case with many local issues, always trying to learn all that I can, and while I have been aware of its existence, and to a certain extent of the role that it plays in our community, it wasn't until a recent Old Town Covington meeting during Miss Onidis's EDC update that I really became interested and started to take notice. In the weeks that followed said meeting, I began to spend a fair amount of time researching the EDC, and I had a series of lengthy conversations with a close family member that previously served on their board. Now, I don't know whether it is a result of complacency, ineffective policies, or an inability to act, whether it is due to decades of failed leadership or countless bad ideas, or whether it is a case of insider politics, but I am incredibly disappointed by what I have learned. And I have developed a lot of issues and a lot of questions and a number of issues. Questions that I thought perhaps my city council could answer, and issues that I hope council could enlighten me on when and if my observations prove to be incorrect. Now, perhaps I'm misguided, but I'm having trouble understanding the purpose for the existence of the EDC, and here's why. The Allegheny Highlands Economic Development Corporation, as it's known today, was formed 18 years ago out of a similar organization already in existence with the same goals and objectives. Those goals starting with recruitment and retention of businesses in the Allegheny Highlands. However, in just the 18 years alone since it became the Allegheny Highlands Economic Development Corporation, countless industries and small businesses have come and gone. I would argue more have gone than have come, in fact. And commercial and industrial properties are and have been sitting vacant. Lear Corporation moved out years ago, and that property is now a warehouse for paper. Hercules recently received a fresh coat of paint and a fancy new name, but it too has become a warehouse for rolls of paper. Same with the Kmart property. The old sewing plant behind Food Line is sitting empty, the Nettleton property, the old Kroger building, Hotel Collins, Falling Spring School, all empty. That is 8 properties, just to name a few, that if properly invested in and properly utilized, could potentially house businesses capable of hiring significant numbers of job seekers. We have acquired the drone zone in the old Edgemont School building, which I know the EDC played a part in, but I would attribute that acquisition more to the efforts of the city of Covington than to that of any other entity. Garton Trucking is becoming a big deal, but I believe that industry can be attributed almost solely to the Garton family. Magic City Chevrolet has set up shop in Covington, but Jacob Wright deserves the bulk of the credit for that acquisition. Clifton Forge has seen a small resurgence in the last decade or so, but nothing major, no real industry. And I would attribute what growth they have had to their town council and their Main Street organization more than anyone else. We've gotten a Taco Bell, a Tractor Supply, the YMCA, and Lowmore recently got a new gas station. But in reality, these are not businesses that are going to create a large number of employment opportunities. They are not businesses that are going to have a significant impact on the local economy. There has been a major push in recent years to focus on our natural resources and attract tourism. But I feel that could be attributed to the efforts of the Chamber of Commerce and the Covington City Parks and Recreation Department more so than anyone else. Now, I'm sure I'm missing something, but has any industry located here employing more than, let's say, 25, more than 15 even in those 18 years? And have they, any that have stayed? In addition, part of the EDC's objectives include workforce development, ensuring a well-trained, available workforce. But do we have it? It has been my observation that the trend has long been that young people move away, leave to get trained, stay gone, and apply those learned skills elsewhere if they want to make any real money, unless, of course, they want to work at the mill. Now, I am aware of the concerted effort by the school systems, JRTC, and DSLCC to change that, to develop trade-based learning opportunities that start at a public school level, include the technical school, and culminate at the college. But to date, I have not seen the real fruits of that labor. However, in defense of our education systems, it can only train a local workforce that is effective locally if that training is in an industry that actually exists locally. And as I understand it, at the college level at least, new courses are an easy installment into the offered curriculum, when and if an industry locates itself in our county that would benefit from a local workforce trained in its ways. I look at our neighbors, Rockbridge County, Greenbrier County. They seem to be growing. I look especially at the recent growth of Botetourt County, who by nearly any standards of measurement are expanding by leaps and bounds. What are they doing different, I ask myself. One thing that I have learned through my experiences in local government with the city of Covington that I find interesting, and it was actually touched on at the recent school merger meetings, is how much one community issue can affect another, and how many issues are tied into one another in some form, such as urban development affecting infrastructure, infrastructure affecting available housing affecting potential industry affecting employment opportunities affecting the availability of a well-trained workforce, the availability of a well-trained workforce affecting the economy affecting schools affecting local politics affecting quality of life affecting local business investments affecting urban growth, and so on. It's almost like a circle of chain, wherein each link is only as strong as the link both in front of and behind it, and one link feeds into the next in a constant repetitive cycle. I spent a few years volunteering at the South Covington Care Pantry, and what always stood out to me during that time was how many families are in need. All the pantries in the area seem to have consistently large crowds. Right now, we need to and are in the process of attempting to combine the school systems so that maintaining them is achievable. And in my opinion, I would say that we're not too far away from the possibility of having to combine the governments for the same reason. However, I believe these challenges are defeatable, but growth and recovery starts and ends with the economy. It is the catalyst for growth and for loss, and the local economy needs real help. So while I am appreciative of the EDC's efforts and the willingness of local government leaders, business leaders, and citizens to try and tackle the problem, I am discouraged by the fact that in a time span of almost 20 years, in a county of almost 500 square miles, there has been not one attracted industry of any real significance, and there is not one pad-ready site, not even one. You want to know what the spark was that ignited Botetourt County's recent explosion? Pad-ready sites. The Botetourt Center at Greenfield, to be exact. Nothing in our area has really been economically developed, and the economy is not developing into anything that is long-range self-sustaining. Many would argue that we are 50 or even 60 years removed from Covington's most prosperous period, our heyday as it's referred to by some of Covington's most tenured citizens. Now, while the EDC cannot realistically be blamed for all these problems, when ensuring the economic prosperity of this region is your main goal, and you have had decades with which to positively influence and foster that goal, these types of realities are unacceptable. And for these reasons, I feel that the EDC has failed in its primary objectives. So perhaps we could work to find a better answer, a more effective way of recruiting potential industry and ensuring the retention of the industry we already have, before we reach the inevitable point of no return. Now, I don't want anyone to think that I am ignoring the role that the mill plays in this community, but relying on only one industry to sustain our livelihood as a city indefinitely is foolish. What if something were to happen to that industry? What would our area have to fall back on? And even if the mill continues to be the center of our economy, that in itself comes with its own set of potential challenges for our area. I would say the most formidable of those challenges at this time being the constant push at a state level to repeal Virginia's machine and tool tax. While that tax repeal may help attract potential industry for a more prosperous and economically diversified region of our state, like say Northern Virginia, with little to no negative repercussions, it would devastate the city of Covington, a single industry city, as we greatly rely on that tax to keep the city running. That tax, collected almost entirely from the city's taxable portion of the meal, is currently the city's second most lucrative form of income, second only to the real estate tax. Therefore, I greatly urge my city council to consider what I have said and to consider withdrawing any and all support of this organization. Support that could be redirected into new, better, and more effective initiatives. Make no mistake, our economic development is an unavoidable obstacle to ensuring the future success and prosperity, perhaps even the very existence of the Allegheny Highlands. And whether it is school mergers, the budget for the sheriff's office, crumbling infrastructure, downtown revitalization, implementation of the new E911 system, meeting DEQ requirements at the wastewater treatment plant, the joint comprehensive plan between the city and county, or even the city's current recycling program, whatever the issue, without first confronting and overcoming this one all-encompassing hurdle, all other issues will in time cease to hold relevance. Our economic development should be the top priority of our leadership. Please also consider the fact that this doesn't just affect those of us that are here today. There will inevitably be generations that will come after our own who will, like us, have a choice whether or not to make Allegheny County their home. And we need to be thinking about them because they will either inherit our successes or they will inherit our failures. I'll close my comments with this. Proverbs 27:12 teaches us, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions, but the simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Catch up with you tomorrow and talk to you about some of that stuff. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to say that we appreciate all that has taken place up at Gina Watson. We posted it on Facebook, Alan. You know Covington, right? People appreciate all our parks. I like it that even though that's a place out of sight, out of mind, it is a beautiful place to be. Of course, that's where my dad played football, my mom graduated from. So to be able to go up to Gina Watson and sit there and meditate about their former life, we're grateful for things that have taken place. So I just wanted to thank Alan and tell City Council, I know you have some hard decisions ahead due to the COVID-19, your budget. Just know that as a pastor of the community, I'm praying for you as you go forward to make decisions. I know that when you look at your budget this year, it's going to be different on next year. So just know that we're holding you up in prayer. Josh, thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate the prayers. We need them. Any other comments? I would entertain a motion to, do you have something?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we're not done.
I thought we
Another
finished.
closed
Oh,
session.
no.
That should have been under new business.
Gentlemen, I move that the council of the city of Covington convene in closed session pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3 and 6, for discussion or consideration on the potential acquisition of real property for a public purpose and the investment of public funds where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Amen.
Negotiating what?